City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded October 2nd, 2023.
I will call the meeting to order. I have 6 o'clock. Director, could you please call the roll?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Beacom is excused. Cooper.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
And Schuler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum, and we will move on. Item number 2 is the report of the September 18th meeting minutes from the Plan Commission. Go ahead.
I wasn't here.
Doesn't matter. Oh, I guess it kind of does.
That's what
Anybody want a motion?
move approval.
Thank you. Seconded by Schuler. Discussion.
Not all at once.
I know, seconds always come quick, but it's that initial motion that people are hesitant to do. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3 is a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend the City of Stevens Point Comprehensive Plan for the purpose of adding a chapter outlining a neighborhood comprehensive plan for the Gerke Park, Washington Elementary School area neighborhood. Said neighborhood is roughly bound by Maria Drive to the north, Interstate 39 to the east, Main Street to the south, and Division Street to the west. We have a presentation from our associate planner, neighborhood planner, Chris Claysmith. Chris, you should be able to see the screen now, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. As you might recall, you can just slide ahead to the next slide. We began updating the city's comprehensive plan back in the summer of 2023, and components of the 2005 comprehensive plan and the 2022 strategic plan set the direction of the comprehensive plan update and the strategy behind it. So we began updating the city's comprehensive plan by identifying and targeting areas throughout the city of Stevens Point to go forward and update our plan. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. As mentioned before, we were following directive from the 2005 comprehensive plan and the 2022 strategic plan. The 2022 strategic plan does identify Stanley Street as one of the hubs or an area, a concentrated area of social, creative, and economic activity. So we wanted to ensure that our first targeted area included one of those hubs, Stanley Street. While the Gerke Washington area is not necessarily one specific neighborhood, the grassroots nature of the planning process did allow staff to tailor the goals, objectives, and policies more directly to a range of neighborhoods, neighbors, and residents. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So some notable moments within the update process. We engaged roughly 230 residents throughout the process, and when I say 230, I don't say 230 over the entire length of it. 230 unique residents did participate in the planning process at one point or another, either through the survey process, digital communication, the workshops, walking tour of the Gerke Washington area, and we are very proud to have that process grow and morph as we moved along to ensure that we maximize participation. As mentioned, we did end up with 7 workshops. 5 of those were presentation, call and response, and activity based. One of those entitled a workshop or a walking tour of the neighborhood. And after our first presentation styled workshop, we did modify to allow asynchronous participation by emailing out updates to residents who had taken the survey, had participated at one point or another in the process, and by announcing that registration link so that way residents who did not participate in the survey could sign up for those continuous updates. We're proud to have continued participation. Some of the residents did host a neighborhood block party on behalf or in direct response to the comprehensive plan earlier in September. We're rather excited to gather some feedback from that block party and how we can continue to bring forward the planning process, further report on it, and build relationships with the residents. Next slide, please. And one of the major points of discussion from this body had been how this comprehensive plan addresses consistency. And so, as I mentioned before in this presentation, that Stevens Point strategic plan identifies Stanley Street as a hub, and so we continue to we made goals, objectives, and policies focused around Stanley Street to embrace that character. If you read through the strategic plan, the major characteristics of Stanley Street could be defined as embracing the college culture of UWSP and allowing for a natural growth of the university in this direction, but also allowing and promoting early retirees and older residents to have access to Schmeekley Reserve and expanding housing closer to Schmeekley north of Stanley Street. As mentioned and noted earlier, the comprehensive plan recommended the use of more neighborhood level plans to guide city development, among other specific goals, objectives, and policies, notably the revision of the zoning code to allow for or embrace some of the historic building practices that had happened in the city of Stevens Point. So that's why you'll note some of the changes or recommended goals, objectives, and policies to promote housing development in a particular manner. The next slide, please. So for those of you who were present in July's Planning Commission, I know Commissioner Beacom was not at that meeting. The July Planning Commission meeting was the original presentation of the comprehensive plan, and there were a lot of residents who attended who had spoken up to say that they had been missing some of the content that they felt like the process might not have engaged in, and they were hoping for more information. So city staff scheduled a informational meeting with within the Gerke Washington planning area. It was rather well attended. We had about 50 residents attend. Two primary concerns were raised. Ease of understanding the plan, that there was a long discussion about the 90-page nature of the plan, and as Commissioner Schuler might point out, there's a lot of content that needs to be addressed in these planning documents. But in further discussion with some of the residents at the scheduled block party in September, their city staff will be adding in a graphic towards the end that kind of summarizes the comprehensive plan for each area moving forward. And the other plan of discussion was a residential development of the Weir and Wilshire land. There's currently some undeveloped parcels, and there's some it's very heavily wooded, and residents would like to see some of that heavily wooded nature remain as a part of the development that happens within the Gerke Washington area. The city had been calling for residential development for quite some time in that space, but the residents were informed that there is a process for amending the comprehensive plan if the residents so choose to really desire that be retained and be made an amenity that's linked to either the university or the Green Circle Trail. There were some other concerns about resident notification that are being addressed. So as we move into our next two areas for the comprehensive plan, staff and others have been very much pounding pavement in making sure that residents in each of the areas are being informed. We've updated our signage for planning workshops, and we've been going door to door ensuring that personal invitations have been met. I think at this point I would open up to questions from the commission regarding the Gerke Washington area.
I would just add one additional thing. So we did meet with university staff pretty extensively, went over the area around the university. The UWSP's beginning their own process of updating their own campus plan, and so we wanted to make sure that, well, we thought this was originally in concert with the existing 2012 campus plan, that there have been some shifts of the university's attitude towards the area immediately surrounding it. So we did make some changes based on those conversations, and the university is supportive of especially future land use and the planning aspects around the university specifically. I think that's a really important note because they are the largest landowner within this identified neighborhood, and it was really important that we continue that dialogue with them.
Absolutely. And as you all know, we've been talking about this for several months. So at this point, the plan was included in your packet. Are there questions, comments, or a motion?
You did see the resolution. Adam did include that as a separate document that was requested. Typically, we don't include resolutions at the Plan Commission level, but it does become part of the document itself, and so that's why it was included, kind of separate from the agenda packet.
And it's also required by law.
Correct.
So I guess I would move to approve the resolution adopting the Gerke Washington Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second? We'll give a second to Arnson. Discussion. Yes, sir.
I had the opportunity to compare the Gerke Washington Plan specifics side by side with the 2005 Comprehensive Plan. And there is nothing in the Gerke Washington Plan that is not already supported and advocated for in the 2005 plan, so I'm very happy with that level of consistency. I think it's going to be a document that is very useful for the Plan Commission and Council going forward. If you look at the overall comprehensive planning process, it's going to be very convenient to have a more extensive inventory and understanding of local residents, well, their desires, as well as the specifics of land use currently and possibilities for future expansion. So I want to commend the folks that put it together, staff, and the residents of the district. I think it's a really nice effort, and I look forward to seeing how it evolves as we get into the other neighborhoods. Obviously, one of the biggest pieces of this in terms of relevance will be how it all ties together at the end. And so I'm looking forward to the Plan Commission having that discussion as, I guess, in tandem with and as part of the neighborhood planning as it goes forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am?
I like the fact that this is coming mostly from people that live in the neighborhoods that are being targeted. It's so easy to sit back and just look at a map and say, oh, let's do this over here and this makes sense over here. May not be what people want that live there. So just doing this from the ground up, I think, is a really good way to do this process, because I think we'll get a whole lot better buy-in from residents that have been involved in this than if we just did it without a lot of input. So to second what Commissioner Schuler said, I think it's really well done as well.
Plus, you lose that variability of Skittles versus M&Ms in the map-making process. So
What about Reese's Pieces?
that is your issue.
It certainly is. No, and I really think that the planning process worked a lot better. Before, we had very formal, stuffy meetings, official, blah, blah, blah. This one, we actually had more of a community gathering, almost a neighborhood party, if you will, cookout, whatever, which made it a little more informal, that I think more people felt comfortable attending, more so than a formal meeting like this. If there was one thing I think we could improve on with what we've done here is, I think we may have taken too big a bite with the Gerke Washington neighborhood, because the concerns that we heard in July were from the people who are on the far east part of that section, which is probably a little different than the far west part of that section. So maybe smaller chunks as we move through the rest of the city. All right, any other comments? Yes, sir.
I guess just one of the things I like is, it's an existing conditions document, and, 2005, the original planning, it's been a long time since that, and as you say, it's a community-based discussion, but this is where we're at now, which is good to know if you're planning for the future, and so I like that aspect of it.
Indeed.
So just real quick, we did satisfy the public hearing requirements for this document in July when the proper Class 1 notice was sent out, and that's why we had a room full of folks. And pretty much after we had yet another meeting at St. Paul's, that was kind of a follow-up from that July meeting, as Chris had mentioned. So this is before you, and this is a recommendation to the council, who will ultimately make the decision.
Any other comments? Comments from the audience?
I guess maybe one quick comment on procedure. Does the document say that there will be a public hearing in front of the Common Council?
There will not be a public hearing in front of the council. However, by our ordinance, any item that council is considering action on, we allow public comments.
So would the council designate this as the official public hearing, because there is a bullet point in here
The
that says
public-
the city council shall hold a public hearing on the request per state statute requirements?
Yeah, so the July meeting was the statutory public hearing.
Okay,
and
at
so
council.
we will make that correction in the document.
Here.
Oh, okay.
All right, we're all good? Hearing no more comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a request. I'm going to stop sharing here. And item number 4 is a request from the city of Stevens Point to purchase a property located at 1200 Main Street with parcel identified in your packet. As you know, the Plan Commission is charged with a recommendation to City Council on all property acquisitions and dispositions. This is the former Shopko building, and we are looking for a recommendation that we can forward on to council. Obviously, staff is recommending approval of the purchase.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Director, could you, or Mr. Mayor, could you give us just a brief description of what we're looking at for approval tonight at this level?
So
What's our purview here?
Staff is recommending that we purchase the Shopko building. That's the only thing. All the parking lot is owned by the city already. We will likely look at disposition or demolishing of the building and rebuilding with a developer. Your purview is making a recommendation whether the council should or should not purchase the aforementioned property. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's advisory, essentially, and that's just required through state stats. And so I think what's really important, so the redevelopment authority owns the entire parking lot around the Shopko building. We've had several conceptual discussions with developers who want to do mini indoor storage or want to redevelop the Shopko lot, Shopko building itself for some other use. And it hasn't really jived with what city staff has seen as an important piece of our downtown, or for what some of our master planning efforts have really identified. So through internal discussions, it seemed to make the most sense that, with the Lullaby site developed now, we need to be looking at what's the next major redevelopment of downtown, and this just seems to be screaming that it's this right here, right now. And so that's why we had previously talked to the Finance Committee in closed session. They gave city staff the initial green light to go ahead and pursue acquisition, and that's what's before you this evening. This will go to Finance next week for their approval, and then Council later this month for their approval as well. The intention is that we would close, obviously, before the end of the year, probably right around the middle of November, as the lease for Spirit Halloween is up. So, as the mayor mentioned, staff's recommendation is approval. We have engaged with Vanderwall and Associates. They're a Madison-based planning firm. They did the targeted area master plan for Division Street and for downtown. We have engaged with them to do some blocking, essentially. What could the site look like from a 2D and 3D level as we move forward? And we're going to have some public input as part of that as well, because this is really, again, kind of the cornerstone of our downtown, and we want to make sure that as we redevelop it for the next several generations, we want this done correctly. So there's a lot to process, and there's a lot moving on, but there's a really unique opportunity here, and that's why this is before you this evening.
The purpose would be, if you remember, it's close to a year ago now, there was kind of a conceptual plan for that Shopko block, including a new transportation hub, some public space, and then mixed use with residential and commercial retail in that area. I think that the city's vision is something similar to that. How that specifically looks will remain to be seen, and of course, most of those decisions will come right back through to the Plan Commission. Mr. Schuler.
I move to recommend approval of the purchase for the property as described.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second? Seconded by Rice. Discussion? Yes, we'll start with Alderperson Kneebone.
this goes along with what the council's been doing going forward, purchasing property to be able to control the way the council, the city, the residents would like to see it developed. So I think this is a good idea.
Thank you. Commissioner Arnson?
Yeah, echoing that, it makes sense because the city essentially owns the land around it, and you can do a more comprehensive development plan if you're calling shots on all the property rather than relying on somebody else doing what you may or may not want. And, all that parking lot space is certainly available for development as things change around, and so that just fits in, I think,
Yeah, and you
well.
can see too, on any given day, a majority of that lot still sits vacant, so to me, that's underutilized space. Heck, I'd be happy if we could just straighten out the road. We'll have those plans coming through. Commissioner Rice?
I guess comment and question for city staff. There, if I'm not mistaken, there's a new downtown bid, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And just curious, how does that group, I guess, influence maybe some of this decision making, or do they really have much impact on that discussion going forward?
So the bid itself has no legal authority on land use within the downtown district. Really where they could come into play is if they want to be part of the engagement and be a stakeholder in how we look to redevelop that specific site. So I think that's a really important piece to remember, that it ultimately is up to redevelopment authority and the council and this body to come up with the plan for redevelopment. So of course they'll be a critical partner in that, but they are not the driving factor behind it.
Right, and just to reiterate, I mean, we will work with the whole area to make sure that it's something that's conducive to the area. As far as the bid goes, I think it'll actually help because that development will then be paying taxes and contributing to the bids. It's all beneficial.
Maybe one more
Yes, sir.
practical question then. Because a significant amount of that property is owned by the redevelopment authority, can you explain kind of the interaction and how
Probably not.
yeah.
So it's very confusing, right?
Presumably, if city staff recommends some sort of development, how the redevelopment authority and this body, again,
Sure.
kind of moves through
Is there a
that process.
chain of?
Yeah, so what we've done in the past is we've actually had joint meetings with the redevelopment authority, the plan commission, and the council. In this room, we've had one giant meeting. But really, it's an interesting relationship. The redevelopment authority was established really to serve as its own independent body. Obviously, with ownership and being part of the city, but not being part of the city, there's a lot of moving parts. But
Well, and those are also defined by statute.
yeah, correct. And so anything that we do, we have to do together. Ultimately, the council may choose to flip the entire property to redevelopment authority. Then redevelopment authority would do something like issue an RFP for the various development pads that will come out of the conceptual planning. The redevelopment authority could also say, we'd rather just have the city council do it. We know that this is a hyper-political issue possibly, and that we don't want to be part of it. So there's a lot of moving parts there, but we've had a really good relationship with the redevelopment authority. And then, of course, you've seen that success with the redevelopment on the north side of the city, the north side of downtown, my apologies, with Northside Yard, Great Northern Distilling, and some of the other projects that we're working on in that area. So,
Thank you.
Anything else? Comments from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. Director, the August 2023 monthly report.
included in your agenda packet. We're staying pretty consistent with we've been in years past, so no additional comments.
Any comments on the community development report? Not a lot of snow shoveling violations this time of the year, but it's coming. All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept that report and place it on file.
So moved.
Thank you. We had a motion, and a second by Kneebone. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is approved, and we stand adjourned at 6:25.
I didn't have a report anyway.
We're good. Did I not? Oh, sorry, director's report.
We're adjourned.
I've got
We're
nothing.
adjourned.
All right, now we're adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.